Nolan Wells bombshell. A witness tells us tonight, I went with Nolan's mother.
A witness walks into a coroner's office with a grieving mother and later tells the world one sentence. I went with Nolan's mother to the coroner's office and this is what I saw. That sentence is not emotion. It is a record, and the record begins with a body found on wet sand, a mother who already knew, and a medical conclusion that would not hold.
To the coroner's office, and this is what I saw. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Think of a signature at the bottom of a death certificate still wet, while the questions above it were already hardening into silence. That is the image here. Not a body in the water, not a grieving family, but a piece of paper that said, no immediate signs of foul play, before anyone had looked beneath the skin. The paperwork already knew.
Nolan is dead.
Could it be a decompositional change? Could it be something else like blunt force injury? It's hard to say at this point in time.
I find it very difficult to believe, Dr. Kendall Crowns, that not one, but two medical examiners.
The official language was careful. No immediate signs of foul play. That is a clinical phrase. It means no visible stab wound, no obvious bullet hole, no deep gouge on the head. But it does not mean no injury. It means no one had looked hard enough yet.
Cannot figure out why he had deep red subcutaneous markings.
Then came the contradiction. A body too decomposed for a visual identification, too degraded for fingerprints, dental records required to confirm the name. Yet the same body was declared free of foul play on first examination.
The day unfolded when Nolan's body was found very bizarrely. You were there. I'm going to get to your trip to the coroner's office along with the family, but I want you to start at the beginning. What happened at the beginning of that day? We believe that Nolan likely died on July the 4th. Let's start with the day that Nolan's body was found and that you ended up at the coroner's office. Start at the beginning.
So early that morning, I deployed some resources. I deployed an aircraft, fixed-wing aircraft that wheels up at 0635, as you can see right there from the photographs. I was on my way to the Lake Mars boat launch. That's where the Tactical Operations Center was set up, and I received a phone call.
The morning began at 6:35 a.m. with a fixed-wing aircraft lifting off to search for a missing 19-year-old. The incident commander was already moving toward the Lake Mars boat launch. Then a phone call. The sheriff's department had found a body. No name, no location, just a body.
Received that phone call from the sheriff's department that a body had been found. Didn't say who it was. I was probably 15 minutes out from the location. I then received a phone call within minutes after the conversation from the sheriff's office from Nolan's mother, Christine, and she was frantic. That mother's intuition, she knew what was going on. So I'm meeting at the boat launch. I was there about 15 minutes ahead of time. Had
Hold on just one moment. Hold on. For those of you just joining us, yep. Josh Gill is with us. He is the United Cajun Navy Incident Commander in the search for Nolan Wells. You stated that you received a phone call from Nolan's mother, Christine. You said she was frantic. What was she saying?
So again, I'm going to paraphrase.
Within minutes, a second call. Nolan's mother. She was frantic. She had been told a body had been found. She did not ask if it was her son. She already knew. That is not evidence in a courtroom, but it is evidence of something.
Okay. So you meet at the boat ramp, and when you first saw her, what was her demeanor?
So she came to me. She gets out of the vehicle, comes to me, gives me a big hug. Again, it's a mother who, her intuition is that her body was found. So obviously sad.
According to what we learned, the moment she gets out of the vehicle, she runs straight to you and is hyperventilating.
Absolutely. She came straight to me.
What happened?
20 people.
When she arrived at the boat launch, she ran straight to the search commander. hyperventilating, crying. She did not say she hoped it was not Nolan. She did not ask for reassurance. She asked the only question a mother can ask when the state has already decided the answer. Why?
She gives me a big hug and starts crying. And look, I'm a softie. I started crying with her. We literally sat in the parking lot on the ground in the gravel for probably 15 minutes. And we had some pretty deep discussions. She cried. I cried with her. And her husband was there as well. And I want to say this, that he's a very stoic individual. And he stood there with his hand on both of our shoulders and was a part of everything. It was one of those moments you don't forget.
What was she saying? What was she saying? I mean, in a moment like that, how do you console a mother, Josh, that has been told by this disembodied voice on the phone, we found a body? I mean, what was she saying? Did she not want to believe it was Nolan? Did she believe it was Nolan? At this point, she had not ID'd a body yet. Nobody had identified that this was Nolan. Was she holding out hope? What was going on?
They sat on the gravel in the parking lot for 15 minutes. The search commander prayed. The father stood over them, silent. A mother sat on the ground and asked God why. That moment is not in any official report, but it should be.
So family and friends started to arrive, and the security let them in, and the sheriff came up, and the sheriff again, he had to help deliver that news, that a body was found and do his formal, and I hate to say notification because at this point he didn't say if it was Nolan or not, but he explained that a body was found and where they would be bringing that body to. And from there, the family gathered, and it was, I'd say, a matter of 15, 20 minutes maybe. We were then escorted. Christine asked me to accompany them to the coroner's office, which I was extremely honored to do so. And then the sheriff's department escorted us to that coroner's office.
The sheriff approached. Professional, compassionate, he confirmed what she already knew. A body had been found. It was being taken to the coroner's office. Christine asked the search commander to go with them. He did.
The coroner's office. What happens when you get to the coroner's office and Nolan's body is already there?
Correct. So we go to the coroner's office, we sit down. The coroner, he comes in, rather quickly, 10, 15 seconds once the table was filled with all the people, family members, friends, myself.
What table? Were you in a conference room?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. A conference room
gosh.
table.
At the medical examiners or coroners, everything is so sterile. And everyone I've ever been to.
So this was like an office conference room. You walk right in the door and there it was. Didn't really have that feeling of a coroner's office, if that's fair to say. More like a business office conference room. He walks in, very polite gentleman, very professional, well-spoken, soft-spoken as well. And, basically said that, they found a body, and from initial appearance, he identified him as Nolan. He did want to take a DNA swab or get a DNA sample from the family just for, further confirmation and for, I guess, record keeping, whatever it was. But then he also, she asked about the condition, and he went into...
At the coroner's office, they did not go into a sterile medical suit. They went into a conference room, a business office. The coroner came in soft-spoken. He said the body appeared to be Nolan. He wanted a DNA swab. Then he said the sentence that would echo for months. There were no immediate signs of foul play.
There were no immediate signs of foul play. Okay. To me, again, my opinion in hearing this is, no signs of blunt force trauma, or any, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, any, signs of foul play. But we would consider that.
Well, I guess they hadn't seen that big red mark on the back of his occipital yet, underneath the skin. And I take it at this juncture, Josh, his throat had not been dissected to look for potential subcutaneous bruising. So...
But a cursory look at a body is not an autopsy. It is a glance. It catches stab wounds and bullet holes. It does not catch subcutaneous bruising. It does not catch deep red markings under the skin. It does not catch what the throat would reveal if it were dissected.
Sure.
You're telling me that from a cursory look at Nolan Wells's body, there was no sign of foul play such as a stab wound or a bullet wound or bruises, deep gouges on the head. That, in my experience, having tried so many homicide cases, I cannot count them, is what you get from a cursory look at a body. Would you agree?
So, correct. I'm not a medical examiner nor a coroner. I have gathered information and heard multiple people speak on that, especially about the red spot, right? We'll quote unquote call it the red spot. And as I appreciate that may be pooling or whatever, it could possibly be cellular decomposition. Again, I'm not a medical examiner or a coroner, but I do know what the coroner said at that first meeting.
The contradiction hardens. If the body was too decomposed for a visual ID, too wrinkled for fingerprints, then how could anyone rule out bruising on the face or hands? You cannot declare a surface clean while admitting you could not read the surface. Nobody asked. Nobody answered.
With him.
Let's get back to what happened in that conference room. So you're there, the mom's there, the dad's there, the coroner comes in, very calm, very soft-spoken, and tells Miss Christine that he believes it's Nolan based on physical appearance and description. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What was her reaction? Because if it were me,
Again,
I would have been holding out. It's not him. It's not him. It's somebody that looks like him. I don't believe it's him. He's out there. If I can just get out of here, I can go find him. What was her reaction?
Again, it was quiet and it was a very emotional time for the family as well. I personally believe.
The coroner told the family he believed it was Nolan based on appearance, but the actual identification came later through dental records. That gap is not suspicious by itself. It becomes suspicious when the same official confidence is used to rule out homicide before the scientific identification is even complete.
Let me understand as I move forward in the questioning of Josh Gill, Incident Commander at United Cajun Navy, with Miss Christine Nolan's mother at the time she was taken to the coroner's office. Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter, very quickly, wasn't Nolan identified through dental records? That's a yes, no, please.
Yes, ma'am. He was identified with dental records.
A reporter confirms it directly. Nolan was identified through dental records, not visually, not by fingerprints, by teeth. That means the body was not in a condition to be recognized by a mother's eyes or by the ridges on his own hands.
Jeff, why did they have to use dental records to identify Nolan Wells's body?
Nancy, usually dental records are used when other forms of identification cannot be utilized. So the first thing that we always try to do is to visually identify somebody. And if you have family there or friends or an ID, something to reference to visually identify the person, then that is the first step. So just getting a general idea of who they are. Then you want to move to a scientific form of identification. And that is something based on a scientific discipline. So there is proof that it is the person when it goes to court or additional questions are asked later. Your first form of scientific identification is fingerprints. That's always going to be the easiest and fastest. And if he had an ID or a driver's license, then there should be a fingerprint on file to be able to identify this person rather quickly. However, in this case, if he had been deceased for a day or two before he was found, then forms of scientific identification like fingerprints or even like a visual identification may not necessarily be available. So in those scenarios, then you move to alternate forms of identification like dental records. So that you would have to get the person's dental records from when they were alive to compare them against dental records taken when they're deceased at the autopsy. The last form of identification that's used, which is the most expensive and most time consuming, would be DNA. However, if you're going to take this case case to court and it's going to be tried like a homicide, then you would probably want to use a form of identification like DNA because it's much more solid. You can verify with percentages how likely it is that the person is who you believe they are. So that's why dental records were most likely used in this case versus something simple and fast like fingerprints or visual identification.
A forensic death investigator explains the hierarchy: visual identification first, fingerprints second, dental records third, DNA fourth. When you jump to dental records, you are admitting that the first two methods failed. That is not a minor detail. That is a decomposition timeline.
I'm assuming because he was outside and in the elements for a day or so. It's hot, it's July, it's very warm weather. However, in most cases where I have seen drownings where the person is underwater for a period of time, their body is pretty well preserved. Unless we're talking about like multiple days, weeks that this person is underwater, usually the water is cooler temperature. And if that person is face down in the water or completely submerged, their body is pretty well preserved until they surface. Usually a body after a couple of days surfaces. So I'm really surprised that he was on the shore. I've never personally investigated a drowning case where a person just ends up on the shore, especially if there's not a strong current or waves. Usually in bodies of water, the person will stay in pretty much the location where they go underwater if it's witnessed. They don't usually move around much after they have submerged or gone underwater. So to me, it's very concerning that he was on the shore or that his body surfaced that quickly. But that's what I am guessing is why they couldn't do an immediate visual identification with the family or even fingerprints.
Then the investigator says what no one wanted to hear. In drowning cases, bodies are usually preserved. They stay in the water. They do not end up on shore quickly. A body on wet sand, partially out of the water, with no strong current to explain it, is an abnormality, not a mystery. An abnormality.
So I would really like to know more about the condition of the body. That's what I am assessing as a death investigator when I respond to a scene. So there should be a death investigation report from a death investigator who has experience looking at bodies and has experience examining these type of things to show exactly what his condition was when he was found. And if the body is decomposed more than what you would normally expect in a drowning case, that should be a big red flag. That's something that you definitely need to look into further.
So you're saying, let me follow up on what you just said. You find it odd that he was quasi on the shore. You also stated that location where the body is found is typically where they went under. You also said that the body must have been too decomposed to make a facial ID. I did not hear an explanation as to why fingerprint ID was impossible.
Fingerprint identification would be impossible if the hands were dried out to an extent where they can't be fingerprinted. Sometimes people that are underwater, or if the hands are underwater, the skin, just like if you're in the bathtub for a prolonged period of time, the skin ends up looking the same way. It just gets kind of wrinkled, and it's very hard to get a usable or workable fingerprint in those scenarios. So one scenario would be the body is too decomposed to get a fingerprint or a visual identification. And then the alternate scenario is the body or the hands were exposed to the water too long to where they just are not able to get a good workable print. So those are the different possibilities. But again, his position at the edge of the bank or partially in the water, that's really concerning because there's tons of people around that area. If he was in that position or on the shore decomposing for a day or so, why did nobody see him? Those would be my type of questions that I would ask if I were a death investigator responding to this scene.
Jeff, I'm looking right now at the photo of his body. And
the position of the body becomes the hard evidence. Wet sand. 3 to 4 feet from dry ground. No waves strong enough to carry a body. No current strong enough to move it. And the question no one could answer. If the body was there for a day or more, why did no one see it?
It's about, the beach is flat, and I would say it's about 3 to 4 feet from where there's nothing but sand, no water. It looks like it's just as the water is starting, like you could walk in it very easily and your ankles may not even get wet. He's not out in the water at all. He's on the beach and on wet sand. That's the way to put it. It's wet sand. He's not out in the water, Jeff Gentry. What does that mean, if anything?
That's really abnormal. I would have a ton of questions in that case. I would wonder, if there's no waves, no strong current, why is that body up on a shore? How did it get there? And just like when we're looking at blood evidence or other forms of evidence, if something is in a certain position within a scene, you have to question how it got there. I have investigated a lot of deaths, bodies in canals, rivers, lakes, large bodies of water, never really near the ocean, to where you would expect somebody to wash up to shore. But in these cases, even though there's strong current, waves, large bodies of water, I've never really seen bodies up on a shore, especially up out of the water enough to where they could decompose significantly to where they can't be identified or can't be fingerprinted. So that would be a very...
The death investigator is clear. In all his cases, bodies in water stay near where they went under. They do not wash onto shore and decompose enough to defeat fingerprint identification. The absence of waves and current makes the location of this body impossible to explain through drowning alone.
Big question that I would have in this case is, with the absence of waves, with the absence of a strong current, how in the world did this, 19-year-old man end up on shore, out of the water?
Josh, I'm going to pick back up with you and Nolan's family at the coroner's office, but you disagree with Jeff's characteristic. Explain.
Wind, wave, tides, currents. If you look, there's also there's some pictures, some aerial pictures that show driftwood way on the beach. Those four things are what impacted, as I appreciate, where Nolan ultimately ended up. If you look in one of those pictures, ma'am, a wave is about to come right over and crest right near where the body's at. So that shows that there is some wave actions and some currents. The winds, the waves, the tides, the currents have a huge impact on, anything that's put into that water. It's known as the washing machine. It's a high tide, high current area. So that was the first things that I looked at whenever I saw that picture. And that is one of those pictures that I showed to the sheriff immediately as I received it. The stuff that's dark in that picture right there, I believe that's debris, and that debris could have easily, or was, washed up on that island. And if you look at the picture as well into the water, the white is, that's wave action, either from wind, tides, or currents. So, and it's going towards the beach. When you walk down the beach and you find shells and you find, the bottle with the message in it, it gets washed up on the beach.
Okay, so I think in simple terms, you're saying you believe the body was washed up from the water to that location. Okay, and Gentry is saying typically a body is found where it goes in the water. So you're right. Tidal experts, water experts will have to determine that. I want to get back to you at the coroner's office. A dental exam.
The search commander pushes back. Wind, wave, tide, current, driftwood on the beach. A washing machine effect. But that explanation cuts both ways. If the water was violent enough to push a body onto shore, then the body should show signs of that violence. Bruising, abrasions, injury. Yet the coroner saw no signs of foul play. The paperwork already knew. Was used to make the ID. Which leads me to another question. If his face and his fingertips were so decomposed that they can't make an ID, then how do they know there was not bruising or there was not skin marks on his face, on his hands? That's a whole nother thing. You're not a medical examiner. I get it. But that's a question that needs to be answered back to you. The family, Miss Christine, the dad, were asked to provide DNA. Okay. You did not see the DNA taken, probably a buccal swab. What happened then?
So if I may add one thing, is I think that'd be a great question to ask the coroner is, how did he identify? Because he was pretty sure, in his best professional opinion, that was Nolan. And maybe he wanted the dental records just out of professionalism. Mm-hmm. And hey, isn't that one of the most definite ways to identify? Sir, and out of courtesy to the family, let's do it the easy way for you as well, as to get the dental.
The final contradiction arrives. A dental exam was required because the face and fingertips were too decomposed to identify. But if the face and fingertips were that degraded, how could the coroner rule out bruising on the face and hands? You cannot clear what you could not see. You cannot rule out what you never examined.
After leaving the coroner's office with the family, was there any concern that there had been foul play?
It really didn't come up. It just didn't come up. I think that whole grieving process, and it hit her hard when they got back to the house. At what point did potential foul play or the thoughts of foul play or the accusations come into mind? I don't know.
I think you're probably right that at that time she walks in, Josh, and she comes into a home where she knows her son will never be back in his room ever again. And when you see all the relatives and neighbors come in, it gets real. It's real.
It does.
And the pictures of Nolan are still
real.
out. I mean, all the family photos are there, and I don't know when it hits you that that's all you have going forward. That's it. Photos and memories. Photos and memories.
Full play was not discussed that day. Not at the coroner's office, not at the family home. The grieving process had begun. But grief and investigation are not the same thing. One remembers. The other asks,
If you know or think you know anything about the death of this young man, Nolan Wells, dial 228-769-3063. There's a $125,000 reward for information regarding.
The Jackson County Sheriff's Office asked anyone with the death of Nolan Wells to call 228-769-3063. There is a $125,000 reward. The official record says no immediate signs of foul play. The dental records say the body was too degraded for a visual ID. The death investigator says the body's location makes no sense for a drowning. Nobody asked. Nobody answered.
Nancy Gray signing off for tonight, but I'll see you tomorrow night as we continue our search for justice for Nolan Wells. Good night, friend.
Go read the publicly available death investigation report for Nolan Wells. Then ask one question in the comments: if the body was too decomposed for a mother to identify her own son, how was it fresh enough for a coroner to rule out homicide? I will see you tomorrow night.